Welcome to Through Time Tales, where history stumbles and logic fails. Before we begin, like and subscribe if you like strange old stories. It helps a lot. Well, here we are again. Another day, another bizarre historical event that sounds like someone made it up on a dare. Today's story is about dancing, which sounds nice, doesn't it? Bit of fun. Keeps the legs moving, good for the joints. Except this particular dancing episode took place in the year 1518. In the city of Strasbourg, which is in modern-day France, but at the time was part of the Holy Roman Empire. A place known mostly for being neither holy nor Roman, nor particularly an empire. Anyway, back in July of that year, the good people of Strasbourg were having a time. The weather was hot, the crops were failing, people were hungry, stressed, and deeply religious in the way people tend to be when nothing else is working. And then one day, a woman stepped into the street. Her name was Frau Trophäa. She began to dance and she didn't stop, which is a bit strange. At first, people thought perhaps she was just having a moment, letting off steam. Maybe the stress got to her. Maybe she'd had a bit too much communion wine, but she kept going. Morning, afternoon, evening, no music, no partner, no shoes, just dancing, unprompted, unbothered, unending. She danced until her feet bled. And then, because this wasn't strange enough, other people started joining in. By the end of the week, there were about 30 of them, swaying, spinning, stomping in the streets in the heat, some of them crying, some of them clearly in pain, but none of them could stop, which you'd think would be concerning. And yes, it was, but here's the thing. The local authorities, the people in charge, the thinkers, the doctors, the men in robes, took one look at this spontaneous, painful, relentless outbreak of dancing and said, "Ah yes, this is a classic case of overheated blood. What we need here is more dancing." So they built a stage, hired musicians, paid dancers to encourage the dancers, really leaned into it. And before long, there were over 100 people convulsing in the square like some kind of tragic prequel to Footloose. Now I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, surely someone realized this was a bad idea. You'd think that, wouldn't you? But no. They kept it going. This continued for several weeks. People danced themselves into heart attacks, collapsed from exhaustion, died. Right there on the cobblestones, mid-twirl. And it was only then that the city officials went, right, yes. Perhaps encouraging the mass death jig wasn't the ideal solution. So they shut it all down, sent the musicians away, took down the stage, and then because they still didn't quite know what was happening, they packed up the remaining dancers and sent them on a pilgrimage to the mountains, for fresh air and prayer. That seemed to help because soon after it stopped, just as mysteriously as it began. Now, the obvious question here is why? Why would anyone dance themselves to death? Why would dozens, maybe hundreds of people join in? Well, historians aren't entirely sure, which, if we're being honest, is quite often the case with history. But they have some guesses. Theory 1, ergot. This is a fungus that grows on damp rye and can cause hallucinations. It's chemically similar to LSD, which, as you might imagine, could make you do, quite a lot of things, including dance. But ergot also causes nausea, seizures, and dying in unpleasant ways. So it doesn't fully explain why people were moving rhythmically for days instead of just collapsing and vomiting in a ditch, like a proper medieval reaction to fungus. Theory 2, mass hysteria. Now this one's a bit more likely. You see, the people of Strasbourg were under quite a lot of pressure. Bad harvests, high taxes, plagues, religion, the sort of economic and emotional collapse that usually ends with someone yelling in a field and declaring themselves a prophet. So it's possible the dancing was a stress response, a kind of shared breakdown, like when everyone in your office suddenly starts baking banana bread during a pandemic. Just more footwork. Some even think it was a kind of spiritual panic, a subconscious expression of guilt, fear, and religious pressure. There was a belief at the time that Saint Vitus could curse people to dance uncontrollably. So maybe deep down they believed it was happening, and so it did. Brains are funny like that. Theory 3. Honestly, no one has a clue, which is fair. Sometimes things happen and we don't get a neat explanation, like why pigeons always know where to walk, so they're exactly in your way. So, that was the dancing plague. It lasted over a month, possibly killed dozens, confused absolutely everyone, and was never really seen again. There were other, smaller outbreaks in Europe in the centuries before and after, but nothing quite like Strasbourg. And today it remains one of history's strangest little footnotes, a time when people danced without music, without joy, without rest, until their bodies simply gave out. And yes, it's funny, in a dark, weird sort of way, but also a little sad, because it reminds us just how much pressure people were under, how scared they were, how desperate. Sometimes the mind just cracks, and sometimes it cracks with a beat. So the next time you feel like everything's a bit much, maybe go for a walk, or take a nap. Maybe don't dance in the street until your shoes fall apart. Just a thought. That's quite enough excitement for one day. I'm going to sit very still for a while. And that's the end of this story. Thanks for watching and for making it all the way through. If you enjoyed it, feel free to like the video or subscribe. Until next time, take care.